So, I figured there's a grand piano on stage. I might as well come out and have some fun, right? We talked a little bit at the beginning about identity and who you are and who do you think of yourself as, and the significance of your name and how all of these things affect you and how they affect the people around you. And one of the things that I've found in my journey is something like playing the piano, that I'm a fan of classical music. And when people find that out and find that, well, I played for a number of years, people are always a little shocked. And then I realize, well, it's because they have a perception of who I am and who they think I should be. And therefore, like one of the first speakers said, you've got a large guy who does a particular type of a job. Well, he probably does or doesn't do certain sorts of things. And that's kind of led me into just thinking about how do we all interact in the world, and how did I get to where I've gotten? How have I accomplished some of the things that I've been fortunate enough to be part of? And one of the things that I really find is critical in that journey is persistence. And hence why I named my talk The Value of Persistence. Because I think it's a theme that you've seen and heard all the rest of the speakers talk about today. One of the defining characteristics of being successful at any endeavor is the ability to persist. Google defines persistence as the firm or even obstinate continuance in a course of action in spite of resistance or opposition. Now, none of us like resistance. None of us like opposition. And in fact, to me, one of the interesting aspects of the definition of persistence is when I look at that word opposition, well, that implies to me anyway, somebody else. Someone else is coming up against my goal. Someone else is pushing back against the direction that I'm trying to go. And in order for me to get where I'm going, I'm going to have to resist that. I'm going to have to say, no, I respect your opinion or your perspective or what you're trying to do, but I'm trying to do something different, or I have a different idea. And I'm going to need to persist in moving that idea forward. One of the challenges, I think, in our Western society and probably in the world at large is that we all want to take the easy path. We all kind of default to the lowest common denominator. And in order to get to your goal, in order to be successful, in order to achieve an outcome, often it's not at the end of the simpler path. It's not at the end of an easy journey. Whenever I look out into an audience and kind of look around and have an opportunity to talk to some of the people, one of the things that strikes me is that, at least from my perspective, I feel like I'm just like you guys. Like, I'm an everyman. I don't feel that I have any special skills. I'm not I'm not, smarter. I'm not better looking. I'm just not, to me, I feel like I am an average guy. And then I look at some of the things that I've been fortunate enough to be around, and some of the people I've been fortunate enough to encounter, and I think, well, when I talk to some of my other friends, well, they haven't done these certain things, or they haven't been in these circumstances. And so I realize, well, I'm not having maybe the typical experience. Not everybody is a professional athlete. Maybe not everybody has been an actor on TV shows or in movies, etc. And then I start to think to myself, well, why is that? And one of the things that I have encountered in my life is that people often look at me from a different type of perspective. They think that I do have some sort of special ability, that I am imbued with skills or talents that separate me, that put me into another category of person, and that explains why I have gotten to the level that I've gotten, or why I've been able to have the accomplishments that I have. And I'm here to tell you that I'm the one living in this skin, and that's not the reason. In my opinion, the reason is this. The reason is persistence. I remember when I first started playing football. I was in grade 11, 17 years old, and I thought, I'm going to try out for the football team. I'd never played football before. I didn't have anything to do in the fall that particular year of school, and I thought, let's try something different. I went out to the high school practice that year, and I had this vision in my head. I'd watch football on TV, and I remember seeing these guys running with the ball and scoring a touchdown, throwing their hands in the air, and everybody cheering. And I thought, yeah, this is going to be great. I'm going to score touchdowns. The girls are all going to love me. I'm going to be the big man on campus. This is going to be a fantastic time. So, well, of course, it can't possibly work out like that. I get to practice. Go through a few days of practice as the coach tries to evaluate us, and he says to me, "Well, Sean, yeah, about being a running back. Yeah, well, you're not that fast, and you're pretty big, and you're pretty strong, and you're not that agile. So actually, we think we're going to make you into an offensive lineman." Now, for those of you who are not sports aficionados and don't know what that means, basically, and no offense to offensive linemen, because I wouldn't have my career without them. But this is the position where you put the guys who are big, lunking hulks who they're not that agile. They're not that they're not going to be zipping around. They're not doing anything particularly quote unquote athletic from the audience perspective. And that's where I spent the next year. And this was completely outside of what I had envisioned for myself. I really had to question seriously, was I going to continue playing football? Was this something I was going to persist in, even though it didn't align with the vision that I had for myself? And at the start of that season, I can remember thinking to myself, well, I'm here now. I started this journey, and I'm going to finish, and I'm going to persist. Even though this isn't something that I want to do, even though this is not something that aligns with what I saw for myself, I decided to keep going. And in the midst of all that, it wasn't fun. I didn't have a great time. There were moments of joy and times when we had a good time with our guys. But I can remember many games, getting up out of the mud because, it's an offense lineman. Your job is there to block the guy right across the line from you. Getting buried in the mud and wiping my eyes and coming up with clumps of grass and dirt and junk in my face and thinking to myself, why am I doing this? This makes no sense. But I persisted, I kept at it, and the next year, the guy who'd been playing running back in my current year, he graduated, and all of a sudden, the running back position was open. And the coach held general tryouts, and I said, well, hey, I want to try out again. The coach is like, Sean, you've been doing great at offensive lineman, and I won the Most Improved Player award for our team that year, and was well recognized around the league as a good lineman, and we don't want to lose you on the O-line. We need you there. But I said, no, coach, I really want to try out at running back. And he said, okay. And I've since joked with him, and we every time I see him, we have this conversation. Really, he let me try out just to humor me, because he knew I wasn't going to be playing running back and that he was going to put me back on the O-line. And so I got into the game at running back and actually did quite well. And the next thing you know, I'm the starting running back. And I started for the team for that entire year, went on to become the school's third highest rusher in school history. And, my vision of what high school football was going to be all about was finally coming true. And you think from that pinnacle, I'm the number one guy, I'm the star athlete on the team, I won most valuable player that year in my high school. You kind of think, okay, it's nothing but up from there. I go to university, and I'm thinking I'm going to be the new guy. I was heavily recruited, but by the time I actually got to camp, a lot of things had happened, but I barely made the squad. And now I'm behind another guy who's really, really good, and as a result, I'm sitting on the bench. So for 2 more years, I don't get to play. I don't get to do anything. I get to go to practice every day, same as everybody else, get beat up every day, same as everybody else, but I don't get the payoff. I don't get to go in games. I don't get to be a star. I don't get to do what I've always dreamed about doing. And if I'd quit, like some guys did, I wouldn't be standing here. Persistence is the ability to keep going in the face of resistance or opposition. And believe me, there was a lot of resistance, there was a lot of opposition. A lot of guys want my position or want to be ahead of me in that race. And finally, 2 years later, that guy graduated, the starting running back, and I had the opportunity to come out. And it was my turn to step up and be the number one back. And I remember very clearly that year that I was hopefully going to be starting, all summer long, I was practicing getting ready for our first game. And our first game was going to be against the UBC Thunderbirds, the crosstown rivals. I was playing at Simon Fraser, and it's a big, big game called the Shrum Bowl. And this is something they do every year. And I was psyched. I can remember being in the weight room in the summer, pumping my iron, going, UBC, UBC, chanting to myself. I know, none of you would have done that. I'm just the one geek here. But I had this little mantra to myself. And so finally when the game came, I was as ready as I was going to be, and I went out there, and I had a great game. It was a fantastic day. I was MVP of the game. I scored 4 touchdowns. Like it was ridiculous. And I was off to the races. And I went on to have a very good career at Simon Fraser for the remainder of my 2 years, and set school records and got drafted number 1 when the CFL came calling. Had an opportunity to go to the NFL. I went down to the New York Giants to try out. It's all going well. It's all going according to script. I'm giving interviews with the newspapers, and I think, yeah, this is exact. I'm going to be on the Giants. I'm going to be the starting running back for the New York Giants. I'm going to be only the fifth player ever to go straight from a Canadian university to the NFL. Get down there. 3 weeks later, I'm on a plane coming back. I got cut. First time in my career that I've ever not succeeded at a level that I set out to conquer. And that was really tough. I was met at the airport by the reporters, and everybody's, so Sean, what happened? How did it go wrong? All the questions, and you kind of go, wow, like, who am I? We talked earlier in the day about identity and how do you see yourself, and that's what generates your behavior. And I was really questioning, who was I? And after, I had a few days, to be perfectly frank, some pretty dark days where I was like, I don't know, am I going to keep playing? Am I going to keep trying? Like, there's nothing really here for me. Football, obviously, maybe I'm not that good, and et cetera, et cetera. Finally, I just said, no, that's not who I am. I'm a guy who persists. I'm a guy who keeps pushing. And if there's another door to open, I'm going to open it, and I'm going to walk through. And so I had the opportunity to go to Edmonton, and they were the team that had drafted me, and I went there, I showed up, and you think, okay, here's the story. He's going to, get on to the Edmonton Eskimos, and things are going to go great, and he's going to become a new star, and blah, blah. No. I arrive in Edmonton. I'm the 6th player on the depth chart, behind 5 other running backs on the depth chart. And these are all amazing athletes. They're all guys who are very decorated, lots of awards. I'm not cracking this lineup. And I'm there for 2 years before I finally said, okay, this isn't working out. And I came home to BC, and now this is as low as it can possibly be. I've gone from the number 1 draft pick out of university that year, going to the NFL, playing for the championship Edmonton Eskimos. I'm back home, having to walk on at the BC Lions training camp, hopeful to see if they'll eat. And they only let me come because I didn't have to pay anything. I lived in North Van, and practice is in Surrey, so I could take the bus and get there. Right? Like, normally they have to fly guys in, and I definitely wasn't getting flown in. So I finally I show up at practice and start the process of grinding it out. And again, the value of persistence. Because even though I couldn't see the finish line, I didn't even know if there was going to be a finish line, I just had an opportunity each day to take another step and try and bring myself back from the abyss of where I was in my mind. And 2 years of grinding and grinding and grinding, and I finally got an opportunity to get on the field and started moving ahead from there, and eventually worked my way up to being the starting running back for the BC Lions. And now my dream is coming true. I'm playing professional sports, and I'm making a material contribution. I wear 2 rings. These are both championship rings. This is from 1994, and this is from 2000, when the BC Lions were successful in their season and finished the year as victors. And as a result, we got these rings. And That's what the kind of thing that I want to impart to you, is that these moments when I'm standing in the stadium, I remember 1994 especially. There's 55,000 people in BC Place. We have just beaten the Baltimore Stallions, who are an all-American team, and by that I mean literally, all the players were American, which was considered to be a major advantage. That of course the Americans were going to beat us because they're better at football. Football is their game, et cetera, et cetera. And so we had this big nationalistic thing with the Lions playing the Stallions and how we can't let the cup go, south of the border, et cetera, et cetera. So when we won, it was a big deal. And we won on a last-second play. Luis Pasaglia, who was our kicker at the time, puts it through the uprights, and the place erupts. And we're all running around, high-fiving, champagne's being poured, guys are having a great time. I owned a nightclub at the time, and everybody came back to my place for the after party. Like, it was a great, great time. And my point with relaying that is all the years before, when I was at the practice field with my buddy, it was pouring like it was today. You know how many days I was outside in that stuff, and we were throwing the ball, and I was working on my hands, because that was one of the knocks against me as a player, was that I couldn't catch. And so I literally have 10,000 hours of catching a football, just running back and forth. Some days it was beautiful, but lots of days in the fall, that's what we got, and still had to persist and do it. When I was out there, I didn't know that I was going to be on a championship stage. I didn't know that I was going to be voted, the Canadian player of the game. I didn't know that I was going to get awards, or that I was going to win trips, or any of those amazing things that ended up happening. I did the things that I was doing because that's who I believed myself to be. That's who I chose to be. We just heard Jimmy talking about making decisions and the value of choice, and that's really resonated with me as well, because for me, that's what life is all about. It's about your choices. It's my choices. How am I going to live my life? Who do I want to be? One of the things that I always try to keep focused in the top of my mind is the effect that my life has on other people, and the effect that my life actually has on myself. And I think about other heroes that I've had in sports. Hopefully most of you guys will have heard of guys like Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods, and these are a couple of guys that I look at and have a lot of respect for. But where would Michael Jordan be if he didn't persist? He didn't make his high school basketball team. And is that because his high school coach was an idiot and didn't recognize talent? No, it's because at the time Michael Jordan wasn't very good and didn't deserve to make the team. He had to persist and keep working hard, and eventually he became Michael Jordan that we all now know and reverence. And he's changed the lives of millions of people, certainly affected the lives of millions of people, if not necessarily changed. And I would say the same for Tiger Woods. And all through his and their ability to persist and keep pushing themselves in the face of opposition and resistance. And my question to myself, which I put to you as well, is how many people would you need to know that you're going to change in order to persist in a course of action, in order to make a difference? Would it be millions, thousands, hundreds? I know for myself, I come to these talks and I think to myself, if there's just one person who hears something that I say today and takes that to heart and actually takes action, as we've heard today, and does something a little bit different in their life moving forward because of what I've said, then it was worth the time. It was worth everything that it's taken me to get here so I could make that impact on one person's life. And my question is, if that one person was you, would it still be worth it? And for me, the answer is yes. If I'm the only person who's going to be affected, then that's going to make a change. And if you're the only person who's going to be affected, then that's going to make a change. But it's never like that. There's always more people who are going to be affected by you changing yourself. There's always more people who are going to be affected by me changing myself. And the only way that we're able to make those changes, the only way that we can become different people, is by persisting. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you.